Foster Care Nation, listen up. This is
Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey.
Strength for the powerless, courage for the fearful, hope and healing for wounded hearts. This week, we wanted to shout out Holly Beal for becoming the newest Patreon member and joining us here at Foster Care Nation on our mission. Thank you so much. If you'd like to join Holly, you can do so over at patreon.com/fostercarenation. When our son found out about Holly, he had this to say.
I think you guys are cool. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thanks.
Hello and welcome back to Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey with Jason
and Amanda.
Today, our guest is Ashley Wayne. Ashley has been featured on the Revive, Real Talk, and the Adverse Effect podcast. Her writing can be found on Scary Mommy, The Mighty, Filter Free Parents, Her View from Home, and For Every Mom. Ashley and her husband have adopted 2 blind children from Bulgaria. Yeah, I'll say that eventually. From Bulgaria. And they have been recently blessed with a biological child just 5 months ago. Ashley was also a case manager at a homeless shelter and at a group home for foster children. She's taught adaptive technologies to kids with special needs and was a director at a camp for both blind and sighted children. You can find her on Facebook at facebook.com/ablindview or on her blog at life-the-braille-edition.blogspot.com. That's Life the Braille Edition with a lot of dashes in the middle. We're excited to talk to you today, Ashley. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, it's our joy to talk to you today. Okay, I found you on a forum and looked at what you had up there and went, yeah, this is wild. I've never heard anybody with this story. So you decided to adopt children being a blind mother. And I can only imagine with the challenges we found that you have some extra challenges there. And then on top of that, you adopted international kids who are also blind as well. You must really like challenges.
Yeah, I suppose you would think that. I can't say that I like them, but I think in a lot of situations it just needs to be done. Regardless of how I might feel at the moment. But your remark about, you have a very interesting story, or I've never heard that story before. I get that a lot.
I bet.
We had wanted to adopt for a long time. My husband had a lot of members of his family that had adopted, and I had worked in the foster care system before getting married, had my master's in social work, so I did some work in that setting, and it was just really on both our hearts. But for a long time, we just weren't in the best situation. We didn't really have enough of an income, or we weren't living in the greatest neighborhoods, or didn't really have enough space in the apartments that we were. And then about 7 years ago now, we were finally in a situation where we just looked around one day and suddenly realized, hey, we have no more reasons not to adopt, no more excuses. Because we had been married for close to 5 years, actually 6, with no children. And so it had gotten really easy to just sort of be in our own like happy married, no children bubble. And so it was a bit difficult to kind of get out of that. And okay, we're going to actually start this thing that we've talked about for so long. So we kind of started that long process of trying to figure out how we were going to adopt and what that would even look like. And yeah, I was very nervous about the idea of having kids as a blind mom. I've done a lot of things without sight that probably a lot of people would think were kind of crazy. I've gone actual rock climbing, like with the ropes and the rappelling down and all that ridiculous stuff. Whitewater rafting. Now, disclaimer: I was 18 and 19 then. I'm 37 now. I probably wouldn't be so eager to do that kind of a thing now. But
Yeah, I'm not so eager to do that either, and I am sighted. And yeah, you're not afraid of a challenge, it sounds like.
No, but parenting really scared me. It really did. I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I knew it could work and it would have to work. I mean, once the kids were in our home, it wasn't as if I, could just, oh, this isn't working, sorry guys. I knew I had to figure it out, but I really had no earthly idea what that would look like.
I don't think most of us did when we first got into parenting.
That's very fair.
But I could see that being some extra levels of challenges there that could really make you a little bit nervous and apprehensive looking at it from your perspective. So what about you and your husband's journey with adoption has been one of the more surprising things for you guys?
We had dinner with some really good friends, and they asked us, what have you guys considered overseas adoption, particularly special needs and even more narrowly focused blindness? And as soon as they said it, it was sort of, the cliche of the light bulb, moment. It was just like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. With my blindness, it really seems like I would be much more equipped and prepared to raise blind children. And so we started looking into that. And I think for me, the most surprising fact was that we had a really hard time finding a country program that would work with us in our situation. There are a lot of countries, for example, China, that there are a lot of blind children there, but our income was too low for them. And so we were kind of eliminated either through lack of what would be considered by the country to be an appropriate income level, or ironically enough, some countries saw my blindness as a barrier to successful parenting. So when we found the agency that we ended up working with, we had gone through their whole list of countries and been kind of ruled out except for Bulgaria. And Bulgaria was a very new program for them. So they weren't even sure if we were going to be accepted by them. So as far as the most surprising element, I would say it was that, just how difficult it was to find a country that would work with us.
I know that you say that the kids are from Bulgaria, and to be honest, before we started talking today, I did go to Google and have to look up where Bulgaria was. I knew it was over there in Eastern Europe somewhere because
That's
I'd read
about all I knew as well. So yes, I did the same thing.
So culturally speaking, I mean, has that been an issue that you guys have had to work around with the kids coming from a complete different country and being started in a different culture?
Not to the extent that I think it would have been if they were significantly older. Our daughter Lexi, who came home first, was 2.5 when she came home, and she was barely, babbling in Bulgarian. So learning English for her came pretty quickly. And she doesn't remember any of her time there. We'll talk to her about it, kind of what we saw when we visited her and what her foster family was like and what kind of food she ate, and the little playgrounds that we took her to when we were visiting. And we talked to her about what it was like and what the city looked like and things like that, but she has no memories of it, and right now is not exceedingly interested in knowing a ton about Bulgaria. She like sometimes will play like Bulgarian music, or talk to her about the foods that we ate there, and try and find. The only problem is things like gelato. Like Americans, we don't do gelato like they do in Europe. So we can't even really take her to, oh, this is authentic, uh, Bulgarian food. And where we're living, there just isn't uh, a Bulgarian community. We had looked. For our son, it's a little bit different. John was 8 when he came home. He's 11 now. He remembers a lot of kind of sporadic Bulgarian words. And he has a lot more memories of his time. But they both, at least for now, have really just are part of, consider themselves part of our family and don't ask a lot of questions yet. But I'm suspecting that will change in the years ahead. I'd honestly love to take them back over there, and they can kind of see the cities where they were from. I think that would be a really awesome thing to be able to do in the future.
That would be a really neat trip.
Well, assuming if, air travel and everything opens up again.
Well, there is that. But I know that we have found with our children, as they get older, they do have questions, a lot more questions. And I think that we owe it to them to try to figure out as many answers as we can.
I agree. It's hard with international adoptions, though, because we have so little information on their parents, on their biological parents. And my husband Luke and I have talked about that a lot, like trying to figure out if there's even any way that we could get information for them when they ask, but often the files for international adoptions are just so very little information in them.
Yeah, I mean, even over here in the States, with some of our children, it's hard here too. We've got a couple of kiddos that are like, I want to see a newborn picture. And I'm like, I'm not certain how I'm going to find that or get a hold of that.
Yeah, you mentioned something about having a hard time finding a country that would accept you as a potential placement with your blindness. But it sounds to me like your blindness has kind of become your superpower.
It's a little ironic, yeah, that's the case. So when we first signed up with the agency that we adopted Lexi through, and they said, okay, we have this Bulgaria program, but it's new. We'll see if they'll work with you. You should hear from us within a month. And so we're just gonna have to wait, and we'll see what happens. Well, the next day, I got a call back, and the caseworker had given our information to the contacts over there, and they had gotten back with her pretty quickly. And we're like, oh, so yeah, you're calling because this family that you've mentioned, they want to adopt Lexi, right? The caseworker, over here in the States, like, who's Lexi? I just had sent you an email recently about a little girl in one of our orphanages who's totally blind. We think this family would be a great fit. So yeah, from having gone from, okay, wait with a month to hear if you're even accepted, to, okay, we think we have a potential, like a match, a child right away, was pretty crazy and a real miracle. And so, yeah, we started that process, and it was long and expensive, and so many papers and words that I had no idea what they meant, like apostilling. It's apparently, it's another form. It's like you get a document notarized, and the notary is verifying your signature. If you get a document apostilled, it's that person is verifying the notary's signature. Now, who verifies the apostiller's signature? I don't know. I don't know where the chain would ever end, but yeah. So it was a long, crazy process. But in regards to the blindness, when she came home, I had this sort of, it doesn't every first time parent, right? Had this beautiful picture of, I'm going to be able to teach her Braille and how to use a cane, and it's going to be so great, and we're going to bond so well over these things. And that those two, cane travel and Braille, have been the hardest things for me to teach her. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just learning from her mother or what, but my beautiful picture of, the bonding over Braille has not gone as well as I had hoped, but but she is learning. We are getting there.
Well, Amanda and I can definitely feel you there. Our children are not blind, and the level of connection that we're gaining while trying to teach our youngest how to read regular words on paper has been just as challenging, I would say. He is not happy about sitting down and doing schoolwork since we're all in the middle of this. We're in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and so we have this whole virtual schooling thing going on, which we've been homeschoolers in the past, so we weren't really afraid of this. But this particular boy he is not wanting to learn, and I kind of get it. I mean, he's 5. I don't blame him. But when we sit and try and learn, it's a real challenge to find ways to teach those things. Now, we're teaching a typical kid typical is a subjective term here, but a typical kid how to read writing on paper. I could only imagine that there has to be some real challenges there, because if you handed me a child who is blind and asked me to teach them how to use a cane or how to use Braille, I'm certain I would be completely lost. What's that journey been like for you?
Oh, it's been it's been slow. Again, I sort of had this picture that she would just take to it and be excited because, well, mommy's doing it, and so I can learn to do this too. And being blind, using a cane and Braille, it's not that different or weird. I can do this. And she actually prefers. So I had never learned the print letters. I had only learned Braille, and I wanted her to also learn the raised, embossed print, like you'll see on signs, right, or elevators, things like that. And so I taught that to her first, and then we moved to Braille. And many, many, many times over the last couple of years that we've been working on trying to read Braille fluently, she's much better now than she was 7. So there's still time, but she would often just be like, why can't I just read the print letters? It's so much easier. Like, because they don't make books that way. They don't make books in raised embossed print. So it's been a slow journey, and I've really had to just not worry so much about where I think she should be at her age, and just work with her at her own pace. I think, she's expressed that she's had a harder time feeling the Braille dots. They're much smaller than even the smallest embossed print that we've worked with. Braille is significantly smaller, and it's been difficult, training her fingers to recognize those. But we're getting there, just with practice and, rewarding her with pennies has worked. When she successfully reads a page, she gets some money that she can save up to do whatever with. And, that's worked. Cane travel, again, kind of the same story. We're getting there. Like most kids who would, I think if they had a stick, working on the impulses, okay, you don't just swing it around over your head. That's not what it's for. You don't just drag it on the ground. There's a technique to it, so that you can actually see where you're going and not fall off curbs or run into signs or walls. But we're getting there. It's a long process, like anything else, like anything teaching a child, but I think it'll happen.
Well, having a lot of boys in our house, I am terrified of the idea of them having a cane, because sight or not, I could see them putting on blindfolds to sword fight with that just for fun.
I was going to say somebody's going down.
Yeah, our son, who also has cerebral palsy, doesn't have a cane yet. We're really trying to work with him on just balance and coordination issues before we add in the use of a cane. But I hope that he'll get there.
I see. I see. So he's struggling with cerebral palsy as well.
Yeah. So, and that was, um, so our son, so after daughter came home, we were kind of figuring that out and, figuring out how to be a parent. And then some really awesome friends of ours who had also adopted from Bulgaria sent us John's profile. And I don't know, we just felt like we couldn't leave him there. He was older and was blind and had cerebral palsy. And it just didn't seem likely that he would be adopted out. And that's not to paint us as, the amazing heroes. And I mean, it's been, but we just felt like, okay, we can at least try and see if we had adopted Lexi so recently that we weren't even sure if we could pursue another adoption that quickly. But everyone, worked with us, and he came home about a year and a half, closer to 2 years later. And he wasn't walking, had pretty much no mobility, did not use his left side of his body. He's been home for 3 years now, and he's, walking, he can walk and he can climb the stairs and he can play piano with, both hands, obviously. He has a real talent for music. We have a lot of work to do as far as the physical coordination and balance and all of that, but I think that will come. But yeah, we were not expecting the cerebral palsy, and so that was kind of a big obstacle. Like, okay, how are we going to make this work? And so far it's, I feel like God has just been very gracious to our family, and he's John has really come honestly a lot farther than I would have thought in such a short time. I mean, 3 years, there are many days when, 3 years, the days feel exceptionally long, but taken as a whole, 3 years is not a massive amount of time to compensate for 8 years of multiple orphanages and very little, if any, education to speak of, and extreme isolation. When we visited him, pretty much all he ever was doing was sitting on a couch, like with a radio or in front of a TV. So yeah, that was rough in that regard.
So I take it they don't have any biological connections?
No, they were from different cities and, kind of different regions of the country. And actually, she is ethnic Bulgarian and he is Roma, which are people that came to Eastern Europe from Asia. And they're also just commonly referred to over there as gypsies. And they just are really not liked by most ethnic Eastern Europeans. And actually, they were one of the groups that was targeted during the Nazi regime as well. And so for the two of them to be siblings is just really awesome and really special.
Yeah, I know I've heard quite a bit in the news recently about the struggles that some of the Roma people have had over there during the some of the refugee situations and people traveling and trying to move from one country to another. So that's amazing that you guys were able to help a kid who had that many things going against him and provide him a home here, especially not knowing about the cerebral palsy ahead of time. What has that challenge been like for you and Luke?
To clarify, and I may have, if I misspoke, I apologize. We did know about it in that we just knew he had it, but we had no real solid, helpful information as to how severe it was. So yeah, when we went to visit him is when we were able to really see for the first time, kind of where he was at. that, thankfully he could stand with help. And so that was, we weren't sure. We went over there, it was like, is he going to be in a wheelchair? And if so, how, how would I be able to do that? As a blind person, like maneuver with wheelchair and all that. But we were committed, we had committed to adopting him, and we weren't going to, abandon him. Again, thankfully, we went over there for the first visit and realized, okay, he can stand on his own. If, you're helping him, holding his hands, okay, we can make this work. When we got him home, we did immediately start physical therapy and things like that, and just work with him around the house. And actually his, the extended family, the grandparents and aunts and uncles, and most of them are back in Florida. We live in Utah right now, but we would visit as often as we could. And I think just that, that family and the constant, praise and encouragement from them really has helped John especially with walking. I remember we're trying to work with him to take those first tentative, understandably very scared steps. And I can only imagine, having never supported your own weight on your feet for 8 years, and kind of always being told, whether implicitly or explicitly, that you can't, that, that it just isn't doable for you. He was so scared to do it, and we were working with him. And we were visiting my in-laws at the time back in Florida, and they have a musical doorbell, like a doorbell that basically has little tunes to it, instead of just the ring. And he loved that doorbell. And so we were, okay, if you can walk, from this chair, it's at the beginning of the living room, and take, I don't remember what it was now, but this many steps, then we'll ring the doorbell for you. And we just kept extending it. And then if you can walk all the way to the door, you can ring the doorbell yourself. And, it was little things like that. Just really, I think, motivated and encouraged him. And, now he's walking much better than I think I would have if I had never walked in 8 years as a kid and were suddenly asked to do such a thing. So yeah, he's an encouragement and an inspiration to me every day.
Sounds like it. It really sounds like it. So now, do you have a good community of people around you who have met a lot of those challenges in their life, whether it be the cerebral palsy or the blindness, to be able to help you guys out? Or are you guys doing this on your own?
I have friends who are blind. I have I know a couple people who are blind parents, but they don't live near us. And, so sometimes it's just through like Facebook, you're just kind of chatting that way. And as far as cerebral palsy, I have the family that were the ones who sent us John's profile to begin with. They have adopted 4 boys from Bulgaria who all have special needs of varying kinds. So if you ever wanted to, it would be another amazing story. If you ever need another guest. But they have a lot of experience with cerebral palsy, and in their situation, and so they've been a huge help to us, recommending resources and suggesting things. And but a lot of it, yeah, I guess, in a sense, we've done it on our own. And that's not to say that we don't research things and talk to people, but a lot of it is just being there for him and being his family and encouraging him and kind of working with him on skills. And you can tell pretty quickly, okay, this approach isn't working. This method of trying to teach this skill isn't working. So we'll, kind of back off and regroup and try something else, until we can figure out what does work. Yeah, so I guess it's sort of been a little bit of a mixture of both. I think, and we have an amazing, church family that is just so helpful and, has been instrumental in just kind of helping us, raise these kids. And so I'm definitely grateful for that.
Well, you're not the first person who has talked about their church family being a big part of it. Was your faith a big part of your journey into adoption? Was that a part of that journey, or was that kind of something that you and Luke came to on your own?
It really was a part of that. In a way, adoption is a good representation, kind of what we believe as Christians. That we were adopted into the family of God through Christ and his sacrifice on the cross. So really adoption for us, is a way to live out that faith and to, try and be as incomplete and as imperfect as we are, but to try and be a picture of the incredible love that God has shown us through Christ. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a huge, huge part of that journey. Absolutely.
Wait, you guys are imperfect? That's one of the things that always makes me crazy when I talk to people talking about, well, I could never do that. I couldn't this. And for this, and everybody has their handful of reasons, but we all have the ability to do something inside of our imperfection. And that's one of the lessons that took me a while to learn, was being comfortable being perfectly imperfect. Yeah, I haven't known anybody yet to walk into this journey knowing what to do.
Exactly.
And I can only imagine walking into you guys' journey had to be a real challenge. Granted, we have our fair share of challenges. We have kids who've been through some pretty difficult things, who've experienced more than most people could even fathom. But my goodness, the idea of what you guys are doing, it's incredibly inspiring to hear that you guys have stepped into this and done it without any real knowledge of where you were going or anybody to hold your hand and lead you through the parts and pieces. But to do that so willingly, then provide so much to build your family.
Well, like you said, I mean, any parent, there's not a manual that comes with the baby or the kid, as much as nice as that would be.
Yeah.
And I've kind of, it's been a slow process to realize that it is okay to, to realize, okay, this isn't working. Let's try something else. And, and when I do talk to other parents of blind kids or otherwise, it's just interesting that so many, we really do have so many of the same questions. Like, did I make the right decision about, something as simple as, what I'm feeding my baby to, am I teaching this subject in school the right way, or should my kid go to this or that school? Or, it's just always so many questions. And, but you do the best you can with the resources and tools that you have, and it works. By God's grace, it all works.
Well, that's what we all love to hope. I'll give you this little piece of encouragement. Our youngest is 5. Yes, he's 5 right now. Sorry, they change every year. I have to work to remember. But our oldest son right now is 22. And we made all the mistakes you could make. We came out of the gate just swinging for the fences on the mistake front. And he's turned out pretty good. As you guys have walked through this journey, how has that affected your marriage?
No, that's a really good question. And I think that's a point that anyone, whether, you're having your first biological child, or whether you are adopting for the first time, or considering foster care, or whatever the situation, I think it's easy to kind of forget about your marriage in the first months and years of all of that, because so much changes and so much is suddenly expected of you. You're suddenly tasked with caring for this person who needs you, essentially 24 hours a day, really. Especially if you're, a very young child or a baby, an infant. And, there was kind of a point where a while in, my husband and I just kind of realized that we that felt like roommates that were just caring for children. We really had to kind of step back and just remember, okay, it's our kids need to see a strong marriage. Our kids need to see what a strong marriage looks like as they grow up. And so just the simple things of making time at the end of a day for each other. For us, that looks like, sitting on the porch with, soda or whatever, and just talking about our day, or, something simple like that, or going for a walk, in the evening, and just making that time to still remember each other, and to put the work into keeping the marriage healthy and the forefront. Because it was so easy to just kind of forget, and you kind of think, well, we'll deal with that later when things are calmed down and we know a bit more what we're doing. But that's never really going to happen.
No, it never really does happen. And we find that challenge too, making time for date night and time for each other when you have a lot of kids and you're working and now virtual school. It's so easy to get caught up in the day to day, but you're very much so right. We owe it to our children to show them what a healthy marriage looks like and how to take care of your partner.
Exactly. That's a really good way to put it. I like that. How to take care of your partner. Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, I'm hoping maybe we might be able to squeeze in a date night tonight for an hour or something. We'll see.
Awesome. I hope you guys can. Yeah, I think that's the other. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I think it really just depends on whether or not the kids decide to cooperate with us tonight or not.
Oh, I hope they do.
It's amazing how 5-year-old decisions affect grown-up stuff so much.
Yeah. How opinionated a little person can be.
Oh, yes, ma'am. We've got a few of them.
A side note, I had no idea. So we have a third child who's, baby, very unexpected, but awesome surprise. But I had just no idea. At 6 months, how opinionated a baby could be and how strong they are. Just, as a side note, like go to, change their diaper or change their clothes or whatever. It's like, how are you holding on to that so tightly? Like, it's a good thing babies are cute.
I may have said that when our first kids when our older kids first got into the teenage years. It took me a little bit to figure that out. So how has, having your own biological child been different, especially because your baby, I don't know the baby's name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't believe I ever said it. I thought William.
Okay. How has raising William been different than your adopted children?
It's been the biggest difference so far has just been the infant stage. When Lexi came home, she was sort of in this odd combination of toddler and infant, in the sense that she wasn't walking yet. She wasn't potty trained. She couldn't feed herself, but she could talk a little bit. And so that was kind of a bizarre stage, but she very quickly passed that and was, walking and feeding herself very, very soon afterwards. And so it's been different in having an actual infant and having to learn all the infant tasks without sight. Like, all right, how do I, feed, how do I bottle feed, correctly? How do I, change the diapers? Like, doing it all by touch is, interesting. How do I bathe a baby? And just know all the, questions like, oh, he's, hasn't eaten much today. Is that normal? Like, oh, he hasn't, gone to, hasn't pooped in 3 days. Is that okay? Like, just all these questions that you assume if you have 3 kids, you've already been through that. But, we really hadn't. So having an infant, just navigating raising an infant is so different. But it really has been awesome in that seeing him, pick up a rattle or toy for the first time, seeing him roll for the first time or laugh or smile, it's amazing and it's awesome. But even more cements for me like my kind of desire to talk about and advocate for adoption, because I keep thinking about John and Lexi, that probably nobody was really there to see those firsts for them. Those things that we just take for granted, like, oh, the baby laughed for the first time, it's such an awesome moment, but for my older two kids, and I would imagine probably for a lot of yours, that there probably weren't it wasn't that happy excitement over the first laugh or the first roll or the first smile. And yeah, so it's kind of further cemented my just advocacy for adoption and just the realization of how important it really is.
Well, I imagine it's got to be a whole new world understanding what firsts are like, because I laugh because Amanda can verify my lack of knowledge of the importance of firsts. When I took our daughter to the beauty shop and had her hair cut because it needed to be done, it needed to be trimmed, and nobody ever told me that you're not supposed to take your daughter for her first haircut before you talk to mom about it.
Yeah, I was at work. I was not so pleased.
I thought I was doing something good. I was trying to get a task out of the way so she didn't have to do it. Little did I know that matters.
It definitely did.
So yeah, but those firsts are something that you really can't get back for those kids. They're with you, and you'll have plenty of firsts from there going forward.
Exactly.
But do you think that's something that affects your relationship with them, not having all of those first stories for them?
I think possibly as they get older, it will, although honestly, it will probably be more of a sadness for me than for them. I mean, of course, I can't speak to how they're going to feel in their teen years, but I think that may be kind of a harder thing for me. Right now, they really enjoy the first for William. Like, they love when, he laughs or when he rolled over the first time, or, they find all that fascinating. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, the best thing I can do is just to highlight the first that we reach now, and there's been plenty of that. John's first piano recital and Lexi's first gymnastics routine and things like that, and to make a big deal out of those just as much as we do, the baby's first, time crawling or whatever. Although I'm not looking forward to that when that happens.
I don't blame you there.
My other two kids can't run away from me very fast. As blind persons, we don't really book it. It's not really, can't just take off.
I would imagine that would have its own level of challenges. I did have one kid who'd never learned to walk. He learned to run. And we honestly had him evaluated because we thought he had a problem with his sight at that point, because he would stand up, lean forward, and he took off into a dead run, and usually would go headfirst into the corner instead of through the doorway he was shooting for. Turns out he's just a kid who lives life that way. But that's been part of our journey, is just figuring out what these kids really need. And so you're on an interesting journey of understanding what kids need with a whole lot of special needs. But I say a whole lot. I guess all kids have their own level of special needs. But you've got some really specific needs there that have got to be a challenge for you guys to get through. Have you found any great resources to help you guys realize where you can find help and where you can find success without having to stumble through it on your own?
We've definitely found a great resource in the Shriners Hospital. They've been really, really great with John and his physical therapy. Even resources like an adaptive bike that he can ride that has more support straps and things for his feet to be on the pedals. Things like that has been great. And, we found just a lot of different sites for ordering Braille books, which has been great for both the kids to find those resources for them to work on reading and just enjoying learning how to read, to read Braille to really enjoy the stories and that type of thing. We've also really, sorry, a lot of noise in the background there.
That's okay.
Give me a second.
We're a podcast about kids and families, so while we do try and keep ours at a low roar, we expect noise in the background.
I know. You'd think after all these years it would not be as distracting, but it still is to me. But yeah, Shriners is awesome. Yeah, that's kind of I would say that's the main one. And then for anyone, as far as blindness is concerned, like there's a lot of sites where you can order Braille books and great Braille, like homeschooling materials, other methods for teaching Braille and that type of thing too. I've gotten a lot of information from the National Federation of the Blind. They have a lot of resources and a lot of products that we found useful with the homeschooling in particular.
Have you guys been using the public school system, or are you guys homeschooling?
No, we homeschool. And we pretty much have been doing that since the beginning, since Lexi came home about 5 years ago now.
So I imagine COVID hasn't been a real big change for you guys.
Not really. No, not in the schooling department anyway.
Well, yes, there's that. The rest of our lives have changed, haven't they? Yeah, we have a couple kids, one middle schooler and one high schooler that are going to in-person school, but our two elementary school aged are staying home. They're doing virtual learning there, and it's added a certain level of challenges, but it sounds like you guys have already been doing the homeschooling, so you kind of have that figured out already.
I figured out. I mean, not to say that it's not difficult. I mean, they're like any kids, most days they would rather be doing anything but school.
Wait, your kids don't love it?
I know. It's amazing, right? Yeah. They'd rather be playing outside. Who would have thought? But, you do it one day at a time. And the thing I really have enjoyed about homeschooling is I can really kind of find a method that works. Like, for example, John can do crazy math in his head. I just kind of discovered that as we were working with him and kind of teaching him, okay, well, let's kind of teach some basic math, and finding out that he got that really quick. And so then we kind of moved on to, okay, instead of, 8 plus 4, all right, let's try a 2-digit number. So, 18 plus 4. Oh, he can do that pretty quick too. Okay, so then we 3-digit, plus or minus a 1-digit number. And, he was getting that. And so then we moved on to multiplication, and he can do like a 3-digit number times a 1-digit number. So like 5 times 215. He can do in his head. And a lot of times I have to write it down. I have to work it out before I have him do it. But so Lexi, our daughter, I had started to kind of work with her in the same way with math, and it just was not going well. And finally realized, okay, it's okay if she doesn't learn that way. I'm homeschooling. I can find a different approach for her. And so we ended up getting a magnet board, because she doesn't know Braille numbers yet. We're still working on the alphabet and basic reading in Braille. But she knows print numbers, the raised embossed numbers. And so we got magnets. And once she could see the problem in front of her like that and actually feel each number, and, it went much better. And so that's one of the things I really enjoy about homeschooling, is that I can really kind of try and, as best I can, meet them where they are and find a resource that works for them.
Well, I think we get tied up a lot on what certain kids cannot do, especially when it comes to special needs. But it sounds like, John has proven that some of the things that he can do are more important than the things that they can't.
Absolutely. And we discovered his gift for music when he came home. I had just told him the names of the notes on the piano, and then we discovered really quick that he has perfect pitch, and not just limited to instruments. Like if our smoke alarm goes off, from I burned something in the oven or whatever, we're like, oh, that's note G, like, or a car horn or whatever, like, or we're tapping on our soda cans. We love soda. I don't know if you've picked up on that, but like, oh, that's C or whatever. And so yeah, we got him into piano, and he's done really well. And yeah, so it's just awesome to find those things that they can excel at, and to give them that chance, and of course to push them on the things that they don't want to learn, because reading in my daughter's case is pretty vital to life, and for John right now, science has been difficult, but learning about the human anatomy and kind of how our bodies work is pretty important to know and useful. So working through the things that are harder. But yeah, it's awesome to find those areas that they excel in. And I'm just grateful that, that they have the chance to discover those things. Because I highly doubt if John had stayed in Bulgaria that he would have would have ever known that he was, could be amazing at piano. And yeah, just, if anyone listening has, considered adoption, but is on the fence, I would really just encourage you to do it, as hard as it is. And something that has always stuck with me is when we went to visit John in his orphanage, there were so many other residents there, and they all had various needs and special needs, and they were all like very thin and looked malnourished. And we found out that John was actually the only child in the orphanage. All the others, they looked like children. They were shorter and thinner, and they were actually adults, like in their 20s, who just had never been able to get out, had nowhere else to be. And so just malnutrition and probably lack of stimulation, had really stunted them. And it just broke my heart, like, to see these adults in that situation. And yeah, I mean, there's just so many kids here and overseas who, desperately need families to be able to have that chance to learn, what they can excel at and who they can become.
If you get on Facebook or social media and you talk about things like adoption or international adoption, all the wisdom of the masses comes out, because that's what Facebook is, right? The wisdom of the masses. And there'll always be somebody who will say something like, well, why would you want to go overseas to adopt kids when there's so many kids here in America who need it? What pulled you guys' heart towards a foreign nation like that?
I want to phrase this well, and I hope people will understand me correctly and accurately. I'm going to go with blindness because that is what we originally we're leaning towards when we started looking, when our friends gave us that idea, that, hey, you should really think about adopting blind kids, because chances are they probably wouldn't be adopted overseas by their own countrymen. And from what we found, that's true. And having spoken with good friends from Bulgaria, who have told us that most likely the kids would have ended up on the street or just living out their adult lives in an orphanage with minimal food and minimal interaction. In America, a blind child or a child with other, needs has access to substantial resources and agencies and programs and supports that just aren't available in so many of these countries. And we just felt like we, wanted to try and give our kids that chance, to have access to all of these things that we can so easily take for granted. And that's not to say by any means that a child who ages out of foster care here has it easy. I'm not at all saying that. There's a lot of difficulties in that regard, but it's still can be a better life than what would have been in a country where there just aren't any of the resources and programs and the technology. And generally here, the attitude about blindness is better than it would be overseas. Like when we went to we brought Lexi home, she was 2.5 and not walking. And there was nothing wrong with her legs. It was just kind of an assumption that was made that, walking was going to be hard for her because she was blind. And so nobody ever taught her. So, it was not out of any disrespect or shrugging off the difficulty that children in the U.S. foster care system face. But it was just sort of a desire to help kids get out of, what could be a very dire situation as they got older.
Well, we talked about your faith a little bit earlier, and it sounds to me like you guys are really being the hands and feet of God wherever you find the need.
I'm trying to be. That's, that's no small thing and no simple thing either. But yeah, I feel like, we've been so blessed, and just trying to do what we can to live out our faith, and not because we have to, but because it's, the right thing to do. And yeah, we're just happy to give our kids a home, and however crazy and ridiculous as it might be on certain days. I think it's better than the alternatives for sure.
I hear you there. Crazy and ridiculous does not mean bad.
Nope.
It means you guys are really stretching out and doing some work that needs to be done and helping kids who needed help. And that is something that you and your husband should be commended for, because most of us, even though people say things like, there's a special place in heaven for people like you, people like, people who are in foster care, it's, the people who are doing it right, there's a special place. God knows there has to be somewhere special for you. And I'm like, no, not really. If you really knew me, the special place is probably not a good one, but what you guys are really doing is stepping out and doing the right thing, as you said, in a place even when it's really hard to do. And that is something that should be commended. And we want to thank you guys for sharing your story of doing the right thing in hard places.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. And I just love being able to tell kind of my kids' adoption stories. And, I hope it can be an encouragement to someone, anyone who's considering it. It is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but these kids matter. Like, these kids are worth it being difficult for us. They matter. They matter more than, my comfort or my ease of life. And, and I have to remind myself of that every day sometimes. There are going to be a lot of hard days, but these kids are worth it. And to give them a chance at family and dignity and, just all the things that we can so easily take for granted. And, there's no one better, method of adoption. It's not like, oh, you went the international route. Oh, that's like the, premium way to adopt. Like, it's so ridiculous. Whatever form someone chose to do is so needed and so important.
Well, I couldn't agree with any of that more. I want to thank you for coming on here and telling your story with Lexi and John. And, well, let's not leave out William as well. And I guess we'll let Luke have some credit, too, even though he's not here with us today because somebody felt like they had to watch the baby, you know?
I mean, watching kids. Who needs to do that? We just let them do what they want.
I'll be honest, I trust a 6-month-old way more than I trust a 5-year-old.
Especially in our house.
Yeah, for sure. You just never know what they're going to be up to. That's
very true.
Every 5-year-old we've had has surprised me in one way or another.
But absolutely, thank you so much for sharing your story and putting it out there, because people need to know that there are no perfect parents. We're not perfect. None of us are perfect. And just because we have an imperfection does not mean that we can't take care of our children.
I'm going to get my feelings hurt if she keeps saying I'm not perfect.
But again, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your courageousness with us.
Thanks so much for having me. And thank you guys for doing this kind of a podcast. It's so awesome to see. And I'm grateful for you guys being out there and sharing adoption and foster care stories because it's so important.
It is very important, and we just want to show the world that, like I said, there are no perfect parents.
Absolutely.
But have a wonderful day, and it was great talking with you.
Same here.
Ashley has a story that hopefully has inspired you and encouraged you to help people who need it wherever you can. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always find us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/fostercareuj. And as always,